Two top British ministers have resigned, plunging UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's government into turmoil. Finance Minister Rishi Sunak and Health Minister Sajid Javid have quit from the cabinet. In his resignation letter to Johnson, Sunak cited the immense challenges facing Britain. He says the public expects government to be run properly, competently and seriously. Meanwhile, Javid told the Prime Minister that he has lost confidence in him and that things won't change under his leadership. He also says Johnson's tone reflects on his colleagues, his party and country, and that he can no longer in good conscience serve his government. Now, last month, Johnson survived a no-confidence vote brought on by his own party. So let's go to the UK now. Our correspondent Ollie Barrett joins us from London. Ollie, thank you so much for your time this evening. Never a dull moment in politics, particularly in the UK, but this is a very interesting and significant resignation. Two very important portfolios, health and finance. Exactly where are we when it comes to just trying to salvage the issue, but also just the response that's come out as a result of these resignations?
These are really significant resignations. One of the things we've known for a little while now in British politics is because of various arcane procedures around how the Conservative Party works when it comes to leadership challenges, is that one of the only ways left in the imminent period to get rid of Boris Johnson, for those Conservative MPs in his party who do want to get rid of him, was really to see a series of senior cabinet ministers putting their heads above the parapet and saying, look, enough is enough. We want Boris Johnson to go and we cannot serve under him in a cabinet. And Rishi Sunak and Sajid Javid really are two of the most senior cabinet ministers, two of the biggest beasts at the moment in UK politics. So it's very, very damaging indeed for Boris Johnson. We've seen another raft of more junior resignations from junior posts in the government as well. Some of those Conservative MPs are people who've been loyal to Boris Johnson very publicly for a long time. So, as I say, very, very damaging indeed for Boris Johnson. The question for him is exactly what he does next. Would he resign? Would he say to the party that he can stay in post for a little while and organise or help be part of a handover of leadership to some other candidate who can take the party forward? It doesn't look like Boris Johnson is going to do either of those things at this point. He's just invited Steve Barclay to be the new health secretary, and one man to watch over the next few minutes very closely indeed is Nadhim Zahawi. He's just been invited, or just gone into Downing Street. We don't know whether he's going into Downing Street to become the new Chancellor, the new Finance Minister, or to resign. And if it's the latter, then Boris Johnson's problems are just getting more and more serious by the moment.
Speaking about it, it's also about the series of embarrassments that have faced Boris Johnson in the recent times. I mean, one such a recent one was not realising that a former minister in charge of pastoral care was unsuitable for the job in government after complaints of sexual misconduct were made against him. I mean, in the resignation letter as well, they said that Boris Johnson said that he had no idea that this was also a reality in context. But then you wonder, why are you a leader if you can't even detect whether or not somebody that you appointed has got some kind of complaints of sexual misconduct in charge of pastoral care?
And that's one of the key questions that Conservative MPs who've been adding themselves to the growing list of parliamentarians who want Boris Johnson gone have been really concerned about. It's the judgment, they would say, that Boris Johnson has demonstrated on a number of issues, from Chris Pincher, this former deputy chief whip who's had to step down because of these allegations of sexual misconduct, having been given a job in government by Boris Johnson when he had been previously made aware of some of these allegations. But go back to Partygate as well. There have been a series of other scandals and mishaps and missteps by the government that Conservative MPs will say, we don't know why this keeps happening. We don't know why the government can't see these problems coming. We don't know why the judgments keep being mishandled in this way. And they therefore say that Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, has to go. Now, loyalists to the Prime Minister would say, in their words, he's got the big calls right. He got the vaccine rollout right. He delivered Brexit. He's been keeping the economy in a relatively strong position. He's been making the right judgments on the cost of living crisis. But that number of allies who are saying those things publicly about Boris Johnson does still appear to be dwindling. And that's one of the other elements to all of this. How much longer can he really maintain a functioning government when so many of his own MPs don't support him?
Yeah, I think more than anything else is the pressure for him to actually do something Are there any more cards or aces up the Prime Minister's sleeves that he can play at this moment in time? Because they always say that, you know, your best story is your most recent story. And I'm telling you one thing, Arlie, this story is not such a good story to tell.
They call him in Westminster the greased piglet because he always seems to be able to escape from situations that would appear more difficult for other politicians to remove themselves from. There's been a sense for a while that Boris Johnson's been desperately just hoping something would come along that would either change the narrative about him or would take the focus elsewhere or would perhaps put the focus on the opposition Labour Party. Now, one of those things that could just help him in the coming days is that the police in the north of England are still looking into the opposition Labour leader Keir Starmer and whether he broke COVID-19 lockdown rules with a gathering held by the Labour Party during a period of campaigning when parts of the UK were still in COVID lockdown. Now, he has said that if he's fined by police, he will quit, he will step down. If that happens, Boris Johnson may see that as an opportunity to try and change the narrative and reset the government. But that takes us back to the idea about the previous scandals we've seen, and Boris Johnson's already several times said that he's resetting his government, relaunching the narrative, listening to people and learning from his mistakes. And Boris Johnson's critics would say the evidence just hasn't been there that he's been able to do that.
Speaking about a government reset, do we know of the political aspirations of one such a Health Minister, Sajid Javid, as well as Rishi Sunak? I mean, could we be finding ourselves where there could likely be contenders in the Prime Minister race?
It could well be. One of the really fascinating things about the decision-making process of cabinet ministers now is it better for your leadership prospects, if you want to have a crack at the top job, to resign and say that you're doing so in good conscience, or is it better to show loyalty? Which of your party allies, your other MPs, which would they prefer of those scenarios if we're looking at a future leadership race? And that's a very difficult calculation to make. Rishi Sunak has been fated for a long period as a potential next leader of the Conservative Party, but then his financial affairs of his family were really hauled over by the British media, and it was considered that he disappeared from the list of potential front runners. And there will be others in the cabinet now who are making those decisions. Should I stay put and show loyalty to the party and the Prime Minister, or am I best off resigning and trying to trigger a leadership contest? It's, as I say, it's a tricky calculation to make.
It's going to be interesting times when it comes to Downing Street. Thank you very much, Ali, for that report this evening. UK correspondent Ali Barrett on that matter.